The Old Testament wasn't written for us at all. And in fact, I heard a pastor say, he said, stop trying to interpret what Paul meant for you. Paul didn't write to you. He wrote to Timothy. He wasn't talking to you in the American church. And if you want to get something, if you want to be blessed from the word, get something and glean from the word. But Paul isn't talking to you. And honestly, he goes, the red letters that are in the Gospels, he wasn't talking to you either.
Yeah.
No. Moses didn't know who you were. Are those things that we can pray? 100%. Can we get blessed from those words? 100%.
Certainly.
But we have to stop thinking the Bible was written for us.
What's going on, my dark web theologians and four dragon friends? This is Ricky, directly from The Lair. Hey guys, I just want to give you a quick update about this episode. This is actually a two-part episode called Hashem, which is the name in Hebrew. It refers to God himself, the Lord. We want to really share this with you. This is a really cool one with my buddy, Justin Paul, who I went to middle school and high school with, and Shelley, who is obviously really, really close to him. He is the worship leader at her church. He seemed like the adequate fit, and this was a really, really fun episode to do. We hope you guys enjoy it as much as we did. Me being the linguistics guy, I mean, geez, can't get away with it. But we hope you guys enjoy this one, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Later, guys.
Good evening.
Ooh, you tried. You almost got it.
Well, because I'm on your side, so I figured I would just go ahead and do it that way.
Well, then, in that case, let's do that.
There we go.
Right
That's
there.
better.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Yes, good evening. Wonderful, wonderful evening to you. Let's go and get started. We have a wonderful guest on today, and I'm very pleased to announce a buddy of mine who was in my graduating class, as a matter of fact, whose name is JP, apparently now. Justin Paul. Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
How's it going, everyone?
Good, dude. I didn't give you guys a chance to give him all the presentation. No worries. Justin is not only a buddy of mine, not only went to school with me, but is actually the music pastor. Am I right? At church. He teaches at university now, which is kind of mind-boggling.
Oh, you know what? So last week they were like hook 'em horns. So I definitely think we need to go, miners.
Horns down, guys. I work for the UT system, but horns down.
Careful. Those horns, when they're down, they can come up real quick, brother. They can stick you good. Stick you good.
A little bit of in-house rivalry.
We do have a little bit of in-house rivalry at my house.
It's funny because I don't have any sports of any kind, like an investment in sport. I could care less, frankly, but I went to UT, so I kind of have to rep it.
I know you did, and
you say I went to UT like UTEP isn't UT. It's just El Paso.
Not.
It is.
Rick, I do understand your UT is UT.
It is.
And like that's just a UT thing. Like
it's a monolith shell.
It's like saying
it's something people take antibiotics to get rid of.
When there's no
that would be a
UTI.
This is a UTA. It's not something you want to get
that's the thing though, is like everything that I've noticed about the UT system is UT is the campus. It's at Austin, and everyone says, I want to go to UT. I want to go to UT, and everyone knows you're talking about Austin. You're not talking about Dallas or San Antonio, or you're talking about Austin. It's like in the football intros when they say, I go to the Ohio State University, or I go to OSU. They're not talking about Oklahoma State University. They're talking about Ohio State.
That's right.
And
hook 'em, baby.
So, yeah, it's. I do understand. I will say, in the first year that the OU played.
But
Texas
that was a rivalry.
It
always is, man.
Out of duty, I went for UT because I had just been hired by UTEP. I was like, just out of duty, I'm going to go for UT Austin.
Please don't fire me.
Please, I hope nobody sees my Facebook status.
Yeah.
And then Cassie was like, Nah, Boomer Sooner all the way. And I was like, okay. So now we're kind of a Sooner household. Talk about that.
Too sooner, maybe so.
Too soon.
Anyway,
well, you guys were talking about knees. Taking out knees. I thought only Tanya's took out knees.
There's a broad spectrum.
Tanya's only take out knees on ice.
Yeah, true. She took take a knee to a very different level.
Jeez, wow, this is all sorts of sports rivalry I was not expecting.
All kinds of smarminess.
Yeah, no kidding. Honestly, I have no real bull in the
Do you
fight.
still soccer, Rick, at all?
Do I still play?
Yeah.
I mean,
you were Mr. 3-on-3 at ORU.
I sure was. But I don't.
Those were the days.
Yeah, I don't. For context, guys, this is when we every year we would go with our school. With the school doesn't exist anymore, which is pretty sad.
Yeah,
we would go every year at the very end of the year and compete like in actually an international Christian competition with all. I mean, just anything you can imagine competing in, not just sports, like anything, like composition. There was mathematical stuff. I mean, just everything. Chess matches. Yeah.
It was everything.
And, yeah, I was always a soccer guy, but now I just don't even have time for it anymore. We every once in a while we'll get together at church and with some of the buddies and play. But honestly, I like volleyball now a lot. To be honest, isn't that funny? It's my favorite sport now. If I have to play.
I love volleyball. I've gotten the really cool opportunity. I've had a couple of volleyball players from UTEP in my classes, and so they consistently, hey, are you going to the game? Are you going to the game? Are you going to the game? And so I went out with Taylor because she started playing volleyball last year, and so I took her to a volleyball game, and I'm not gonna lie, man,
it's intense.
I'm digging this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Volleyball's intense, man. It's not a wiener kid sport, man. It's really cool. Yeah, it is. I mean, my sister grew up playing it, and she got her scholarship for it, which is crazy. So
small schools. I played it my junior and senior year because I had no choice. I got to co-captain. Man, the pictures are so bad. Might find one and show you because one of my friends recently unearthed one. And can you just know that my grandson is not the only family member who has rocked a mullet?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. YES.
As long as it's not a skullet, I guess.
Dude, it was the 80s. It was the 80s, and it was acceptable. But I'm going to do everything I can to keep that photo off the internet.
Party in the front. No, what is it? Business
up front. Party in the back.
So sorry that happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, it
was curly too,
right? That is the most sports talk I've had in a really long time. Not gonna lie. For our listeners, hope you guys like sports because we are usually never talk sports ever. Justin, is there anything that I missed, man, that you think is relevant that you would like to present? I mean, I wouldn't say qualifications, but just like that you feel like define you.
I think the big thing is I've been, I don't know, man. I've been a Christian longer than I can remember not being a Christian.
Yeah.
And something that I really love is the music ministry. I really feel like music ministry gets you to a point, or music in general gets you to a place spiritually where you reach the throne room of God. And when you're in those moments of worship, I find, leading worship is a very I'll go ahead and say it's become a popular thing,
sure.
And the music industry is being flooded with songs that are void of biblical principles.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was telling Shelley, I heard a really great speaker. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's a younger guy, and he said, when you sing these songs that are devoid of biblical principles, that are devoid of the actual things from the Bible, who's to say that Satan didn't have a hand in writing that song?
Sure.
And I was like, oh man. And then he said, can you imagine sitting in church and being like, oh, I just love this song. And the devil's whispering, yeah, me too. I wrote it. It's like, oh,
he's like, wait, here comes the good crescendo. You're going to love it, dude.
What? On that note, Jess, we have to change the words of whatever it is called today. I think it's called My Fear Doesn't Stand a Chance, because it's not our fear. I was as we were singing, I was like, I'm not singing that. I'm like, fear doesn't have stand a chance when I stand in your love, for sure. But it's not my fear, man. That's somebody else's fear.
I see what you're saying.
And it's little things like that sometimes, though, that because I'm so literal. And for me, singing, I hear all the words. I cannot filter them out.
No, for sure.
And I'm like, oh, I'm not claiming that. I'm not claiming that fear is mine. And I love the song. And I still say
100%.
every other thing but that word my.
Whatever, I think a big thing is that there's a reason that I don't do a lot of songs that I used to do anymore. And a lot of it's because, like you, Shell, I think when I listen to these songs, I'm very literal, and when I'm singing Oh, How He Loves Us, which is a fantastic song, Crowder's great, love him. But it's such a poetic song that my mind goes away from the worship and goes on to the poems and the scene that he's painting, and words are so powerful. And I guess, Rick, this kind of segues me into what I really has been kind of on my heart for just quite some time, is the power of words.
Yep.
The words we don't realize. I don't think, and I say we, people as a
sure.
We don't really realize the magnitude of what we are speaking into existence.
Yeah,
when we say these things.
And real quick, guys, just to give you guys a kind of a quick heads up, what we're dealing with today, and I'm gonna let Justin continue on his thought, but we're dealing with names, and in particular, I've labeled this one Hashem, which means the name. And that is a reference, and a biblical reference to God himself. That's what that means. And so really what Justin is pointing at is, and that's the direction he's going. I just want to give you guys kind of a frame of reference for what we're talking about today. And it has to do with names, why they're powerful, what they are. But frankly, we're gonna come across all sorts of words, I'm sure, in our talk today. I hate words, by the way. I don't enjoy them at all, and I don't ever talk about them. So
yes, of anybody, I know that you hate them. So
yeah, you are definitely the one dragon variety.
That's right. I was like, man, I'm gonna do this whole freaking degree thing in something I despise. Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Go ahead, man. Take it away. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good. I kind of got in this deep dive a little bit about a year and a half ago, shortly right after my grandpa passed. I guess so. It's been 3, but my mom and I and my grandma, I guess at the time, went to the Museum of the Bible up in DC, and it was me and Taylor, my sister, Abby, mom, dad, and grandma. And my mom got a Bible there, and just because they have 100,000 different types of Bibles there, right. And the Bible that she got was a cultural relevance Bible. And I get a little not conflicted, but I get a little second guessy, I guess, every time I say cultural relevance, because my mind automatically goes to something different.
Yeah, like DEI or something like that. I'm sure. Right?
So the Bible that she got frames the scripture as a whole within the confines of the time period in which it was written.
Right. Gives context.
Context, right. And so
cultural context, right.
Cultural context. There we go. Cultural context Bible. That's the best way for it. Best word. And I got asked
historical culture, not synchronistic culture. I get what you're saying, buddy.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. And shortly after that, I got asked to do the men's Bible study. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. You want me to do this thing? I'll talk, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And so my mom and I've been blessed, extremely blessed to have parents in general, but have parents that will gladly take time to talk about the things of the Lord. Right. My grandpa and I, when we were building my home here in El Paso, we would have wonderful, fantastic, great conversations. I remember one time I asked my grandpa about what he believed in terms of the Big Bang or how he felt about the Big Bang or things like that. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not going to lie to you. I just don't care. And I was like, that's the most non-pastorally thing I've ever heard you say. And he said, no, listen, I don't care if you want to believe. If you want to believe, and it helps you believe that collisions happened, and that helps you, cool. If you want to believe that a meteor came crashing in, or you want to believe that particles came together and created this, fine. What created the particle?
Yeah.
And he was like, he goes, all I
can't
care
get away
about,
from that.
right. He said, all I care about is, are you going to acknowledge the intelligent design.
Sure.
That's all I need you to do.
Yeah.
I don't care if you want to believe that it's 1 billion years. I don't care if you want to believe that it was 7 million years.
Right.
What I want to believe is that God did it. That's all.
Amen.
And I was like, cool, man. And so we had marvelous conversations, but my mom and I got on this topic of names.
Yeah.
And shoot, I wish I had it in front of me. I don't have it right in front of me, but when I started reading this after we had all talked, I guess maybe 2.5 weeks ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, a little bit ago.
I started just rereading and just let me dive in
Yeah.
a little bit heavier. And one thing that it did that I loved is that it said, when you read Genesis and you read the Old Testament in general, you can't read it through the eyes of someone in 2024.
Absolutely not.
You have to read it. You have to read it within the confines of the culture.
Absolutely.
In that time period. And he said, you have to, and the author said, the best thing to describe it is it's a massive river and the Israelites are going to be in the flow of the river.
Yeah.
There may be swimming upstream or they may not be in the river at all.
Yeah.
But there's a river connecting all of the cultures, all of the civilizations, and Israel is going to fall in line with the civilization, with the culture. They're going to go against the culture, or they're not going to eat. They're going to be just so far removed from the culture.
Sure.
But there is a thread that is going through. And I was like, okay, that really helped me in just rereading Genesis.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what you're talking about is really, really Shelley and I's approach in general to the word. Because goodness, we have this really, really difficult time as modern humans, as modern Christians, especially, but I really don't like that word. The more I've studied, the more I realize that we are not the modern ones, that we are the really apish, baboonish types that really are pretty stupid compared to our ancestors. We're pretty dumb.
Well, I mean, we live in a world that is under the effects of entropy.
Sure. Well, but also, I mean, that's one thing, but also we live in a plastic reality. The things that we're surrounded
totally
by,
manufactured.
That's exactly what I mean. Like post-industrial revolution, right? Like we think that the industrial revolution is the Enlightenment. I'm not saying that there weren't crazy inventions and amazing things. Absolutely, right? We might say there were reinventions a lot of times. I mean, that's my perspective for the most part. But there were certainly giant leaps and bounds in our understanding in new ways or in different ways, we might say. But I'm getting to my point here by saying all that is that we view the past as a bunch of ignorant people that kind of just rolled around in the dirt,
superstitious,
and figured out how to make crops, and like we've really bought into this crappy narrative that says that people in the past, we spent 90,000 years figuring out how to farm. Are you freaking kidding me? Like in what dimension do you really 90,000 years to figure out, oh, we put this in the ground, we get carrots? No, I don't think that's how it works, dude.
Right.
Like there is clearly
an anti-narrative to the truth, because the word tells us
absolutely
that God told Adam, tend to the ground.
Yeah.
Like Adam literally, sure, king, I have no problem with that. He was a farmer king.
Yeah, farmer king, good old farmer kings. One day we'll all be one there. Actually. I mean,
true. I can't wait, actually.
I know. So my real point here is just that we have a distorted view of the Bible that even 200, 300 years ago was an unthinkable way of looking at the Bible. It was it's such an unthinkable. And I know that you're no foreigner to the ideas that we deal with, which is giants and all these spirits and all this stuff. We talk about that at length. And I know that some of that was done away with in the early days after the New Testament was written and all that. I get that. But even still, there was just this absolute respect for God's word. There was a deep striving for understanding. Even in what we call the dark ages, there was this deep desire to understand all of reality the way God had made it. And then we come to years right after the Industrial Revolution, not too far after that, especially like in what we say right after the 50s ish. Like we all just sort of turn into like a mind mush. And so what you're getting at is so unbelievably important. It's so unbelievably important to understand the Bible in the way it was written, not because people were ignorant, but because we are ignorant is a better way to say it.
So
for sure.
much.
And a big thing that just listening to you talk, the big thing that changed, in my opinion, is we just got a whole lot more selfish.
Very egocentric.
We are extremely, like our society today is extremely egocentric, and in education, I see it every day. Cassie is on the front lines of egocentric.
Oh, Lord.
Budding
egocentrism.
Absolutely, because not only now is it not just budding, it's budding in these middle schools and in these elementary schools because the parents are egocentric, because it's just like
that's the way they were raised.
That's absolutely, and they were raised that they are God's gift. And I'm sorry, no, you're not. When I hear these parents speak about their glory days, it kind of reminds me of, oh man, that movie Couples Retreat, where he goes, "I did rock in high school. You want to watch tape?"
Lord.
And there's parents that carry around their clips of their high school football team. Like, I don't care what you did in high school, bro. Like, calm down. No one cares. Oh yeah, like it's
wow.
Yeah. That's
super weird.
Like, it's just that it's just, I'm not saying that there's any parents, I'm not saying that those parents in Cassie's school, but the mentality is, if I wouldn't have done this, I could have been
more great than I am in my little world.
We traded some gods for one set of gods for another set of gods, and these set of gods happen to be the one that I determine my fate, I determine my reality, I determine how things plays out. And frankly, it's not true. Dude, I was just telling you today, I was supposed to drive to Waco and I drove to freaking San Antonio, right? And my initial set of thoughts was like a bajillion. Crap, I messed up. I'm not going to get any money today. We're not going to make any money today at all because I'm a moron and I drove the wrong way. In fact, I wasted money and time that I could have been studying for my exam. And now I drove all this way and this and that. Just a million thoughts were going through my head, And I can sit and dwell on that all day. Or I can say, maybe God wanted me to go here, even though it feels like I'm a moron, and maybe I am a moron and God still wanted me to go here, and that's okay too. Right. And I promise you, I'm not even trying to make myself feel better, but as I was talking to the Lord, I was like, God, why did you let me go here? This is what a waste of freaking time. And the Lord told me, I spared you some other stuff that was dangerous for you. You didn't need to go where you think you needed to go today. So honestly, man, you're right. Like, our self-centeredness is so, what's the word? I mean, problematic, I guess, is an easy one to use. It's such a
hold on. I'll answer that for you.
Go.
It is 2 Timothy 3, starting with verse 1 says, "But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness." Ooh, can you say, what do we call that? Virtue signaling. Having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people.
You know what? The word you just said that spoke to me even louder than that one was unappeasable. My God, that's so accurate. Unappeasable.
Cannot be made happy.
Yep. Cannot or don't want.
Right, absolutely. Can't and don't want to. That's my mom told me, my mom always says, if you find somebody who wants to be angry, they're going to find something to be unhappy about. That's the.
If I want to be offended, all that I have to do.
You'll find stuff to be offended, and you'll find dumb stuff to be offended at. And I think if you want to be that kind of person, you will always find it. But going back to the egocentric rise, is that when we see that, it also makes us think that the Old Testament was written for us.
Right. Oh, good point.
The Old Testament wasn't written for us at all. And in fact, while I know that we can, I'm not sure if it's like just me, but something I heard a pastor say, he said, stop trying to interpret what Paul meant for you. Paul didn't write to you. He wrote to Timothy.
Right.
He wasn't talking to you in the American church. He wasn't talking to you leading from a
So
platform with a microphone.
put your iPhone away.
Right, absolutely. Put your iPhone
It's
away.
my iBible.
And if you want to get something, if you want to be blessed from the word, get something and glean from the word. But Paul isn't talking to you. Mark isn't talking to you. And I was like, and honestly, he goes, the red letters that are in the Gospels he wasn't talking to you either.
Yeah,
he was talking to the disciples. And he said, and we have to also translate that idea that Moses wasn't talking to you either. No. Moses didn't know who you were. David wasn't talking to you. David was talking to himself. And he was like, create in me a clean heart, oh God, renew a right spirit within me. Are those things that we can pray? 100%. Can we get blessed from those words? 100%. But we have to stop thinking the Bible was written for us.
Yep.
That's like thinking that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was written for me. I get. I mean,
this is a bit of a weird thought, but I think it's relevant here. We might actually, as Christians, modern Christians, do ourselves a favor and look at other religions and how they view themselves in terms of how the religion plays out. You ask a Buddhist who God is an impersonal force. Now, I'm not telling you we should view God as an impersonal force, but we should understand that we are minuscule in the grand scheme of what God is doing. We are so small. Moses was so small in the grand scheme of everything going on.
Right. God made us lower than the angels, than the messengers, than the errand boys.
Right. Exactly.
I think we do have to put ourselves in once we find it in our heart to realize that it's not for us, that it's not to us. It's something that we use. It's a tool that we use to hear about God's greatness, about God's right. It is a tool. It is not meant to replace the communication between you and the Father. It's not meant to take the place of your
You're
own.
going exactly where I'm talking.
It is there as I don't want to say it's supplemental. Are they God's words? Absolutely 100%. And I'm not taking away. I don't want it to even be a thought to anybody listening that I'm unvalidating what the Bible is. I think the Bible it is the very word of God, but it is not there to take the place of your one-on-one relationship with God.
Of course. Right. Well, here's the deal, right? I've spoken about this a million times. One thing I will say is I love what L.A. Marzulli says. He always says that the Bible is the guidebook to the supernatural. All right. I totally agree with that. Number two, I've talked about this at great length. What did people do before the Bible? What was God's original intention? Did he say, here, Adam, here's a bunch of pages you can read? He said, no, let's talk. Let's chat.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why podcasts are such a big deal. People would rather hear what's going on versus actually read it. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't read. We should certainly read. In fact, we do. I'm probably reading more than I ever bloody have in my whole life. Like I'm reading all the time, absorbing all the information in the world I can. But God's original design was not for us to read stuff. God's original design was for us to have direct interaction with him. That was the point.
Well, and you read Genesis. One thing that I heard a pastor say is, he goes, "What's the first question in the Bible? Where are you?
Where are you?" Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
The first question written in the Bible is God asking, "Where are you at? And why do you feel that way?"
That's God's first question. That's God's first question.
That's God's first question.
The first question in the Bible. The first question in the Bible is a sinful one. Did God really say that?
Sure. Yeah, but God's first question.
That one. Yeah.
God's first question is
seeking us.
Where are you? Seeking us out.
And then also.
But what a way to
through
show
that showing us where are we at?
Absolutely.
Right.
Where are you? And then
sword.
Not only that, but already going into, let's figure out how we got here.
Right.
Why did you do this? What happened?
Right.
Like it wasn't, oh man, I got God's questions.
Get into your room.
Right. It wasn't. It was God's first question was, hey, where is my friend?
Right.
Where is my creation?
Where's that interaction that we have?
Where's my interaction? We're supposed to be walking together right now, dude. It's the coolest day. Where are you at? And then it was, why do you feel shame?
Right.
Why do you feel shame?
Right.
Like it was, and then as soon as it was like, okay, you had shame because you sinned. Okay, cool. Why did you sin? It was to bring God's questioning wasn't to bring I'm God and you're little. It was let's figure out where we got like
it's
how
not,
we
it wasn't shameful.
Together.
It was trying to understand where the relationship broke down.
But, you know,
I think it was
it's not like he
him
didn't
trying
know,
to
you know
have
what I mean?
us understand.
It was to require it,
where it went down.
I teach agency in my class. Like that's the whole point is I teach the four principles of my class that I teach are your identity as a college student is to get you to think, hey, I am a college student. I can do it. And it's also the other thing is for you to take agency. It's to require you to take agency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what those questions were. Those questions were to require Adam and Eve to take responsibility and ownership of what they've done. Because the first step of admitting that you have the first step of fixing the problem is admitting you have a problem. If Adam and Eve never admitted to having the problem, the reconciliation couldn't happen because they had to first be able to say, I messed up. I did this.
Yeah.
And of course they said, of course you get, I ate the fruit, but it's because the girl you gave me, right? Okay. Yeah. You have this blame shifting that's going on, right? But you have this, God is in the garden and he's saying, take ownership. I got to bridge. I'm trying to bridge this. I'm trying to bridge this, but I need you to take ownership and I need you to do this. And once we get out of the mindset that, oh, this Bible is for me. Once we get, I'm glad that when you read the word, you are getting stuff out of the word.
Sure.
I think that's important. But once we get out of the idea that it was written for me, because it's not, and we're able to see who was it written for, you actually dive into a much more romantic, not husband-wife romantic, but a father to his children romance.
Right.
You get this different idea, and it makes reading Chronicles that much easier.
There's a robust story because there's an actual robust story about what you're studying, and all those boring names. See what I did there? All those boring names pop out like, oh yeah, like just giant. Like what? This dude? What? That kind of thing.
And see, that's my favorite thing. I love reading. Like I was telling my mom, I'm having a massively hard time reading Chronicles because it's and if you
and because it's so much like Kings.
Sure.
That you already read, and you're like, didn't I already read
It's like, I just read this story. My big thing was, how do we go from Melchizedek, Abimelech, and to Peter?
Right.
Like, how do we get from all of these crazy, cool names
to
the ones that take so much time to speak out loud?
Right. And so I saw this meme that said, if we were to travel back in time, and we were to be there when Jesus is walking around and go, hey, Peter, he's not turning around.
Right.
Like, that's a name that we're able to read. Right. But going back to the idea of names is once I was able to get into this idea of, okay, let's look at it culturally. Let's look at it culturally in terms of that time period, not Middle Eastern culture today, Near East culture back then.
The culture of Moses.
Absolutely.
The writers, the culture of the writers.
I was, and I have some questions that I'd love to get y'all's opinion on and everything like that. The idea of naming in the Near Eastern culture back then, especially within the culture of Mesopotamia and things like that, naming wasn't the symbol of creation. Having a name didn't mean it was final. Like having it be created didn't mean that that's the same day you got a name. It meant that without a name, it was functionless.
Right.
It was purposeless.
Right.
And when we read the words, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and we read the in the beginning, we have to realize we're not talking about in the beginning of time. We're talking about the beginning of that week.
Sure.
That 6-day period. We're not
Which
talking
happened
about
to also be the beginning of time.
Right. Well, yes.
Well, because God's
well,
not in time.
right. God's not in time. It's the beginning of time as we know it. Right. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't stuff going on before that.
Right.
And
I was just having this conversation with my son today. He goes, Dad, what do you think the Trinity was talking about before we made? I go, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, before we were made. I'm like, well, you mean for all of eternity? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, babe, there was no before. Before wasn't a thing. And he goes, oh, that hurts my head. I'm like, yeah,
it hurts my head.
Crazy.
Because linear time, we're so used to the concept that not everything outside of it is foreign to us.
Right.
But there's way more outside of linear time than is inside of it.
So when they gave something a name in the Near East, in that culture, in that time period, that meant it was finally given a purpose.
Correct.
It meant that it was finally given a job. And with the words that you see in the Bible in terms of the original text, like when it says deep cries out to deep, is it in Ezekiel? Is that where that is, Shelley? Deep cries out to deep.
Shell knows all the things.
Or is it Hosea? I can't remember. It's one of those. But it's where it says deep cries out to deep. That word for deep is the same word that they use to describe like desert wastelands.
Psalm 42:7.
Oh, well, there you go. See, Psalms, Hosea, Ezekiel. It's the same.
You know what?
Tertiary detail.
Romantic.
It's in the Old Testament. It was written for me.
It was written for me. David was thinking of Justin.
David was thinking of Justin way, way back when, But the word void, it meant there wasn't purpose. It wasn't necessarily this dark black hole. It was just a purposeless chaos. It was full of chaos, right? Is what it was. And so I posed a question to my dad, who's very, very scientific. My dad loves the Lord. I want to preface that for anybody that's listening. My dad loves the Lord. He's a children's pastor, but he's a very sciencey, mathematicsy kind of guy.
I love him.
And one thing he did pose, and I really love this idea, is he said, I really wish theological seminaries made sure that pastors really studied science.
Right.
And I was like, why do you say? And he goes, because when you stand up and you're giving an argument based off of theology, but you're fighting science and you don't know what they believe, you just come across as ignorant. And I was like, oh.
And you know what? When you know science, all that you see is the whirls of God's fingerprints. Like
for sure. 100%.
Everywhere. Math, science, quantum physics, biology. Like God is all up
for sure 100%.
In the science.
To quote Nacho Libre, I don't know why he's always judging me because I believe in science.
Tonight we face Satan's caveman. So
receive him. Okay.
I can say this now that I'm not in the district because I don't work for the East Leda district. So if anybody from East Leda district is watching this, I for sure did this. 100%. I really wanted to have a lazy day, so we watched Nacho Libre in my class. But I was teaching music appreciation.
Oh, that's funny.
And so on my board, I wrote, today we're going to be discovering traditional Mexican American songs and cultural blah, 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 and practices and all this stuff. And so I have a friend of mine that comes in and goes, dude, that's a heavy lesson. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, bro, we're watching Nacho Libre. I just had to have that on the board.
Somebody's going to.
But so
my kid couldn't watch it, by the way. He's like, this is stupid, Dad. And I kept watching. I was like,
one of the best movies ever.
Oh, it is stupid. Yeah, it's stupid. I agree.
That bear is after my own heart. We could sit and watch things together.
Very religious.
I am. Okay.
I love that. But when I thought of this idea of, it was given a purpose. Names define purpose. In fact, something that I read in the concordance was naming was actually a practice in purpose.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Makes sense.
I love that idea that by the time when you give a name, it wasn't an arbitrary thing. They didn't look at things and say, man, that's a light. When God said, let there be light, first of all, light travels at what is it?
186,000 miles an hour.
That's it. 186,000 miles a second, right?
A second. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And when God said, let there be light, think of what rushed out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It wasn't
It was
just
a big
this,
bang.
Sure. It wasn't this like Edvard Grieg, like da, 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 da,
Right.
it was like boom. It's flashlight in the middle of the night in your eye, like oh,
it's supernova. Like really,
for sure.
God said
100%.
light, and waves and particles permeated the known dimensions.
You know,
and I guess
the dimensions that we've
talked about this a bajillion times, but it was way faster than that, because there is scientific evidence that light is slowing down. So I've heard some people say that they believe that it was literally like 10 exponentially times as fast as what it is right now, which is unbelievably mind-boggling to me. But
that's like burn the skin off of all of the things in a 1/10 of a second.
Well, that basically like runs through the whole universe instantaneously. So there's that.
And who's to say? And I guess this is where my brain went. I love just thinking weird things. We have these fossils that are the carbon dating says they're 65 million years old, or blah, 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 right? Who's to say that's not true?
Yeah.
That God couldn't make a mold? Yeah, I agree. He could make a mold.
And when light hit, when God said, let there be light, because that's the purpose. Light is there to separate what? It's to separate darkness. So he goes, okay, cool. Right. That's light.
Chaos from the order.
And then he called it light and darkness because it had a purpose. What was the purpose of light? Day. What was the purpose of darkness? Night. Right. And so he called it that because it had to fulfill a purpose. There's an article that I was reading that said there was, I think it was in Acadia. There was an Akkadian god, the god of grain. And grain didn't exist because the god of grain didn't exist to name it grain. Yeah. And it was like, but grain was there. But they didn't call it grain because it didn't have a purpose. They didn't use it because it didn't have a purpose. It didn't have a name because the god of grain didn't call it grain. This is for food, right? And I think something that then in those Near Eastern cultures is that back then, I don't know, like I am not versed in Near East, modern Near East and Middle East cultures, but what I've been reading is that when it was given a name, it's because that was the purpose of the thing. Yeah. That was the purpose of that was its function. It was given functionality the minute it was given a name. But if it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a function. And it really got me into something that I was thinking about in terms of who we are and the power of our names. But, I just want to I'll go into that. I'll go in a minute. Just kidding. I'll go in. One of the things that I define about myself is I love being a dad. I love being a dad. And until I had children, I couldn't call myself a dad. But the minute Taylor was born, I was given a title. Sure. Right. Title had a function. Right. The function of the word dad. The function of the word dad was protector. Yeah. Caregiver. Example. Provider. Now, all of these things, all the functions of dad, Shelley, all the functions of mom, all the function, you look at all these terms, the terms that you look at mom and dad, and you can't know the function of mom and dad until you are a mom and dad. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't
think you do as a kid. You think you know what their function for us is supposed to be. Right. But when you become one.
Right. 100%. 100%. You don't know what it's like to be a mom or dad until you're a mom or dad.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and the thing is that name, Taylor, when Daniel and Joanna come out and say, Dad, I already know what their expectation is.
Sure.
Their expectation is not Justin, Justin the husband, Justin the friend, Justin the coworker. Their expectation is, I need you. I
Right.
need something from you. And that name, Dad, it's an expectation of their reality.
Sure.
And their reality
That's cool.
is, I am going to be here to take care of you, to protect you, to provide for you, to make you laugh, to do fun things with you. And that's why, honestly, it drives me nuts when my kids call me Justin. Because when you call me, and honestly, yeah, you can go and you're like, well, it's a matter of respect. And yeah, it is a matter of respect. But honestly, it takes away my title. It takes away my role.
Right. The people who call you Justin don't have
that particular
the expectation that you are going to be dad.
Because the reality of me is different.
The kids don't get that yet, that being able to call you dad entitles them, and real entitlement entitles them to that from you.
Yeah.
If I say I wouldn't call you dad. That's just creepy. But I don't need to be dadded by you. But what's another part of that too is that when you become a parent, you see God differently.
You do.
Certainly.
You see God as a father. You say, oh, no, I would never give my kid a rock if they ask for bread.
Well, you read John 3:16 differently as a parent.
Yeah, you do. What a sacrifice, right?
You read the story of Abraham way different.
Sure.
You read all of these things. And as a parent, Ricky, you have 2 boys. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sure you've read the story of Isaac with Esau and Jacob way differently now.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's crazy.
It's like, how do you not know that it's not real?
For me, one of the things that, as a dad, that's a very interesting concept. I'd never really placed the title as kind of stepping into the role.
Right.
I'm going to say this before I forget it. I was watching a video because I've always been very interested in naming conventions of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
They're very, very fascinating. They have a lot of very biblical ideas, which should give you pause for thought, to be honest. But we're not going to go there. That's a whole different episode, one we hope to have soon. But what's really cool about it, about this particular tribe that I looked up, is they're called the Wazaze. I don't know how to pronounce their name. Sorry, guys. Sorry, elders. Sorry, guys. Anyway, they were talking about naming in general, right? And all these guys that they were interviewing from the tribe were namers. Their job was to give names to things in the tribe. That was very cool to me. Mm-hmm. And as they were talking about some of the stuff, like how it works, well, one of the things about naming, about a name, they literally believe, check this out, Justin, they literally believe that when a name is given, and they broke down the process, I'm not going to go through that, but when the name is given, it literally is coming from the unseen realm into the seen realm and is given as that indicator for that individual, that child, that adult. And it's really crazy. When they get to the other side, they want to make sure that their names are not forgotten, because they have to be called out to be found in the unseen realm, in the afterlife. They have to be called by their Indian name, by their indigenous name. It's very, very cool. One of the things also about that, right, is because that name comes from the other side, when they pronounce it, they are telling God how to see this individual, which is kind of mind-boggling. I could talk about that stuff for hours, but I want to come back to what you were talking about. And I mentioned that because it's got some precedent for kind of what we're talking about here. When you have a kiddo who has some sort of disability, you certainly see the world very differently.
For sure.
And Not only your dad, which I think is a fascinating topic or theme that you're talking about. It's a really interesting idea. I'd not really considered it that way, but it seems very applicable. It seems very relevant. And being the thing about that is that you get named that thing. If you notice, a name is not something that you choose. A name is something that is given to you.
Yeah.
No one gets to choose their name, right? It's a very rare thing for someone to choose. They can choose to change their name, but for the most part, you have to almost start over if you change your name, right?
Well, it's
Someone has to
funny.
give that to you.
I chose Gigi as my grandma name, right?
Right.
Gigi. And right now, Avi is like, none. And I was like, well, I guess if it ends up being none, then that's going to be my name. I mean,
Yeah.
my name will be whatever he calls me.
Yeah,
Frankly, I have a ton of different names because I've lived in all sorts of weird parts of the world, right? And I'm going to totally forget my topic with my kiddo, but that's okay. I mean, it is relevant. But when I moved to Mexico, and especially in Hispanic culture, but in Mexican culture especially, you always get a nickname. Everybody has a nickname.
Yeah.
And you might have several nicknames depending on all your groups of buddies and everything. Well, mine is El Cabazorro. And to this day, I use that. El Cabong, yeah, it's the Spanish version of El Cabong. But my other name is Li Rei, which is my Chinese name, which was given to me by my Chinese teacher. And I mean, those things stick with you, man. Like I use that in all sorts of stuff. Like I even broke it up and used it as a password for a while, and those things, they stay with you, and they really do. Like they're part of your essence, and you can't really get away from them. And they do give you purpose, but it's more like, instead of giving you purpose, it's like they give life to the purpose.
Sure, for sure, 100%.
Right? Because you have. Sorry.
No. Go.
Like the grain thing you were just talking about with the Acadians, right? The grain already existed, but it didn't have a name, so it couldn't be employed. Well,
Right.
actually, geez, my mind is going this way. I didn't mean for it to, but
No.
that's actually what is believed about what Adam did in the garden when he named the creatures. It's believed that he was actually giving them their function. Like he was telling them what they were going to be doing.
Right.
Elephant, you're going to elephant. Skunk, you're going to skunk. Fox, you're going to fox. So yeah. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
No.
Cat, you're going to be annoying and lay on my desk.
Cat was different.
Yeah,
cat, you're going to feline, right?
And they do so well.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought up nicknames. I was talking to my mom about this, and it's a segue into the more names of God that I really want to get into. But there are nicknames that I have that only belong to certain people.
Yep.
For instance, Johnny Kersey, someone I love very much. His nickname for me is Fuzzball. Why, I have no clue. But when I hear, hey, Fuzzball, my expectation is Johnny Kersey.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
My expectation is not Susan from church.
Right.
And it doesn't. It's not. And I'm not saying anything.
Right.
But that's my expectation, because my reality of that nickname is Johnny Kersey. That means Johnny is here. Johnny is coming to talk to me. He's going to put his face next to mine. He's going to give me a big old hug. And that's the reality of that nickname. And it's not that no one else can't call me that. It's that when I hear, hey, Fuzzball, I know exactly who's saying it.
There's a bond.
My JP was a name that I got when I was super little. And Joe Chandler, who, God rest his soul, I love Joe, he called me JP all the time. Yeah. And as soon as he passed away, literally, I think the year that he passed away, Shelley kind of came in and started calling me JP again.
Yeah.
And,
you're even in my phone. That's who you are. You're JP.
And it's honestly a big reason why I put JP on the screen is because
love it.
There's an expectation. I know who calls me JP. I know that the expectation of my reality within the confines of that name is who knows to call me that. Amber Bellows, or Amber, not Amber Bell. Is it Amber Bell? Yeah, Kim Bellows. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amber.
Miss Amber.
Amber. Yeah. Amber calls me Amber calls me JP. She calls me Little Polly. To this day, she calls me Little Polly.
Oh, that's funny.
And again, when I hear Polly, I know exactly who's talking to me. Tina Norman calls me Justin Pollywog. and has called me Justin Pollywog.
Like the Pokemon?
Like
like a Pollywog.
There's there's like literally a Pokemon called a Pollywog.
Right,
Sorry.
Do you not know what a Pollywog is?
I guess I don't.
It's a frog before. It's like another word for tadpole.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so, like, she called me Justin Pollywog, and that was my name forever. And again, when I hear Justin Pollywog, I know that it's Tina talking to me.
Justin Pollywog.
And it's all based on relationships.
It absolutely
That's exactly what I was going for. Yeah.
Cindy Hodge calls me Little Justin. There's nothing
sure does.
There's nothing little about me anymore, but I will always be Little Justin.
Hi, Little Justin.
Hi, Little Justin. Hi, Little
very
Cassie.
much. So
absolutely.
True.
But see, Shelley, now that you heard the name, now not only can you see it, you've seen her.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
But now you can hear her saying it, right?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Because the names evoke the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
The names evoke the relationship. I know exactly who is talking to me. I don't even have to be there. I can hear it and I can be like, oh, Joe's there. Oh, Shelley's there. Oh, this person's there.
It's sort of like, well, it's not sort of like, it is that when new names arrive or nicknames arrive and stuff like that, what's actually happening is that all those synapses in the brain, this huge train of biological connectors, right, is deeply embedded in us. And I think obviously we can talk about the scientific aspect of it, but I mean, I don't ever separate the two anymore. In my mind, they're all the same big mushy ball of stuff. But it's very fascinating because with the name comes the entire story. And on the back of that story is the entire friendship, is the entire relationship. And so when you speak those kind of things, there's this indescribable type of feeling. Now that may be a negative feeling too, right? Like It didn't have to always be positive. It could be highly pejorative, right? Like I'm sure what we were talking about, Jacob was not probably super happy about his name for all time, right? He's like, well, all right, cool, I guess,
But Rick, going on to what you were talking about, the Native American tribes and how the name comes from the supernatural into the natural.
Yeah.
That story is a living embodiment of the name Israel coming from a supernatural place into a natural place.
Right, absolutely.
Because it wasn't just some schmuck giving him the name. It was somebody saying, your name is Israel. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is who you're going to be.
It was Christ, because that was a Christophany. That angel of the Lord it designates that it was Jesus.
It was like the thing is that was, and I said this yesterday, I wonder, did Jacob ever embrace the name change? Because you don't, like when I read that story, the Bible and Moses, whoever's attributed, I mean, Moses attributed writing it, but maybe Moses didn't actually, I mean, scribes wrote it, but they don't reference him as Jacob. So did Jacob ever actually own it? Like there's moments where you see Israel, but honestly, if God said your name is going to be stupid from now on, then I'm going to go by stupid. And it'll go on my driver's license. It'll go on everything about me. My name will be Stupid Cardenas, because if God's going to do that, then that's what, like, he's changing my name for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, and Israel means wrestles with God.
Yep.
Right.
And so it seems
only
exceedingly befitting.
Well, maybe he didn't want to go by it because he lost,
But he only kind of lost because he got the blessing.
Maybe he was a sore loser.
Well, his hip was out of place for the rest of
I'm
his
sure
life.
he was very sore and
literally a sore loser.
So you just connected something for me that I never really, I don't think I would have placed. This weekend last weekend on Saturday, we're doing a food drive, just a food bank, and we're just giving out tons of free food from our church, just giving it away. And towards the end of it, a lady pulled up, and I can't even remember how to pronounce her name if I wanted to, but I wouldn't put it out there anyway. But she told me she's just in a really rough spot, And without going into details about her life or her family's life or anything, she said she wanted prayer for her husband. And I said, absolutely. Well, I said, first of all, I said, would you like me to pray? I felt that the Spirit was like, you need to pray for this lady. She was super emotional and stuff. And was like, oh yeah, we'll totally help you. Here's a church. And I was like, no, this lady needs prayer. And so I asked her, would you want me to pray for her? She goes, yeah, absolutely. I was like, okay, how can I pray for you? What do you want me to pray for? She says, would you please pray for my husband for X, Y, and Z? And I go, absolutely. What's your husband's name? My husband's name is Israel. Whoo! I told her, the man who wrestles with God and then comes out and wins. Okay. I go, we're going to absolutely pray for your husband. But what you just made me realize, and the reason I'm bringing that story up is that even I've never really understood, and I've never been able to grasp why I couldn't really identify with names in the Bible. And I was like, you're going to name your kid after some name in the Bible. Okay. I've heard that a million times. And that kind of thing. That's always been kind of my, like, my kids have super weird names. Neither of my kids have normal names. I'm not going to give them out here on air, but
but they have names that have very specific meanings.
Yes, they do. They do. But
they embody the meanings.
They do. They sure do. And we'll totally do that off air. But what I just realized is that I'm going to go Jordan Peterson for a second here. These names and these themes are so ancient that they are literally bound to these names. Like, these concepts are bound to these names. And so even though the Bible wasn't written to us and it wasn't written for us, it was written for us. Right?
It's the immutable, unchangeable,
exactly,
unending Word of God.
Which is why those names, they ring so true when we hear them. You're just like, Israel. When I heard that name, and it was like the Spirit of God coming on me, not even on her. I was like, oh man, this dude's name is, I fought with God and I still came out winning. Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy name. You don't wrestle with God and win. That's not a thing that happens, dude. You wrestle with God, you're going to get the shaft and you're going to die, brother. You're going to last 5 seconds. You're not even going to last any time in the ring. You get the first punch and you're out. But this dude did. And God considered him worthy that he was able to, and he did. I don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is that those names hold so much relationship, not even personal to us, because I don't know Israel, right? I mean, I don't really know the dude. There's no way I can until we're on the other side and then we all get to meet each other. But right now, I don't know that dude. But just the essence of his name carries with it so much information, so much baggage, and so much relationship to Christ, right? To God, to the Godhead, that because of that, there's a personal relationship that I can draw on, even though I'm not even there really.
Right.
I can't. Sorry, Joseph.
No. Go ahead.
I can't seem to get out of Genesis 17. I mean, it's not where I'm reading or anything, but my brain goes back there so frequently. And I think Jacob was able to wrestle with God and come away with a blessing because of that unbreakable covenant that God cut with Abraham.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Christian Theological Dark Web Podcast. For all questions, collabs, or comments, contact us at solo.to/thectdw or the Christian Theological Dark Web @gmail.com. To become a special access member or support our ministry, sign up on Spotify or Patreon. This has been another Four Dragons production from the CTDW. God bless, Shalom Shalom, and Maranatha. Come, Lord Jesus.